Hey everyone, it's Jonathan, and today Dan and I are back to talk about another British pantomime. In previous episodes, we did some well-known fairy tale adaptations, Sleeping Beauty and Cinderella. I had been unfamiliar with the British Christmas tradition of pantomime until we did Sleeping Beauty Uncovered back at the beginning of Christmas in July, and then by the time we came back at the end of July for an episode on Cinderella, I had done some more research and discovered that while most pantomimes cover well-known fairy tales and folk tales like Jack and the Beanstalk and Aladdin, there was one on the list that stood out to me as something that didn't seem to fit in: Dick Whittington and His Cat. One of the versions of Cinderella that we did was on ITV's Cinderella Pantomime, and I saw that they also had a Dick Whittington pantomime. So when I decided that this December I was going to do a more random selection of things for Christmas, I figured now was the perfect time to come back and see what this story was. So before we get into this actual special, how familiar were you with the story of Dick Whittington? Because I don't think I had heard of it before. The first I think I heard of it was when we were doing the other pantomimes earlier this year, and I started looking into what pantomime was, what they usually like to adapt, and I saw Dick Whittington mixed in with like Snow White and Sleeping Beauty, and that didn't fit with what I know of like all of the other stories they were doing as like fairy tales, and Dick Whittington was this outlier. So I looked it up, and it's like a really old story, like
Mm.
so much older than I was expecting, like 1600s old.
Oh yeah, yeah. No, it goes long, long back. I'll be completely honest with you. I was aware of the story, and I kind of had a vague idea of what it involved. But it was one of the few pantomimes that kind of just always seemed to pass me by growing up. I never actually sat and saw Dick Whittington in its entirety at all until literally like a couple of nights ago when I sat and watched this for the first time. So
Mm.
this was really my first experience with this particular pantomime too. The sort of core plot of it is very well known. A young rural boy goes to London to try and seek his fame and fortune with his magical cat and becomes mayor of London. That kind of plotting is very well known, but the actual logistics of how that works, I know I can't say I'd actually seen that one. I was much like yourself, much more into the Sleeping Beauties, Aladdins, and Cinderellas of the panto world.
Okay. Apparently, Dick Whittington was a real person, which I also didn't know. He was
Hmm.
actually the mayor of London in the 1300s.
That makes sense. I would say that makes sense because a lot of sort of stage adaptations around that time would have been, especially in the 1600s, would have been kind of based more in farce and more in that sort of angle of humor. A lot of the sort of earliest areas of pantomime were adapting those historical moments into a more farcical sense. In many ways, it reminds me a little bit of how Monty Python kind of took that kind of British Empire 1920s to 1940s British stiff upper lip thing and parodied it in the 70s and kind of turned it on its head.
Mm,
Panto, in that sense, is very anarchaic. It will take a lot of stories that were taken very seriously for the time and just add a distinct camp twist to them that I don't think has been similarly replicated very easily in modern times.
interesting. I don't know that it started out as a pantomime because the earliest play it says was a drama play, but it kept getting changed, and at one point it was part of like a Punch and Judy show, which is like
Yeah,
puppets.
yeah.
So for whatever reason, this story is one that people have clung to for over 400 years. So
It must have something going for
I
it.
guess
I'm,
so.
I'm trying to figure out how the cat character would play into a serious adaptation of Dick Whittington, especially given that this was my first time watching it from start to finish, and Julian Clary playing the cat is such a distinct characterization. I'm just trying to imagine like some really serious kind of drama, but then there's suddenly like a snarky cat in the background just kind of commenting on everything that's going on.
I did watch a few videos on YouTube about the story a while ago just to like figure out what this story was. I don't think the cat was real. I think that was something added at some point during the folklore tradition. I don't know if it was included in like the early drama plays, but it's been there for probably hundreds of years now.
Hmm.
The cat, I don't think. The story changes depending on who is telling it because the cat doesn't always talk. Sometimes it really is just a cat.
Mm.
The main plot of like the original fable is Dick Whittington going to London to seek his fortune. And in some of the ones I saw, he had the cat with him. Other times he gets the cat later, but he's on his way to London to try and make his fortune. And there's also this detail of hearing like bells ringing that are also talking to him, like foretelling that he will one day be mayor of London. Like that's always like a key detail for some reason, which didn't really make sense to me, but it's folklore, so it's one of those things like it's a fairy tale, just go with it.
Yeah. I was going to say, I mean, from the sounds of it, it sounds like it was like very serious drama. Question mark, question mark, question mark. Alcohol probably involved.
I
Pantomime
don't know.
version. Because I mean, one of the things that I mean, I'm sure it's the same in the US, probably on a city by city basis. But one of the things in the UK, in particular, is that sayings, stories, and so many other different areas can change ever so slightly from city to city, but
Mm,
it's consistent across the country. So you could have, say, for example, an old folk song that is sung one way in London, and then the next city on from London will sing the same song, but maybe one word will change, and then the next city over, another word will change, and then before you know, by the time you've reached Scotland, it's a completely different song, but it's still grounded in the sentiment of the song that started in London.
yeah.
So, like Dick Whittington, for example, I imagine probably that story travelled here, there, and everywhere and had bits added on and bits chopped off and bits moved around all the way through it. And it kind of comes back to the nature of pantomime as well. I think we had that discussion in our last Panto podcast where we were talking about some details that seemed to be added to that pantomime by the writer that didn't really exist in any other version. And I
Uh-huh.
think the nature of pantomime really is that you can kind of have certain creative liberties with traditional stories if you think that it will make it funnier or will enhance the sort of overall experience of it. I mean, throughout this pantomime, there were a couple of characters who I'm pretty sure don't turn up in the other adaptations of this, like Harry Hill as the painter in the second half. And I'll be honest with you as well, I don't know how well you know Harry Hill or not. I know he was in one of the previous pantomimes we discussed playing the Master of Ceremonies, I believe it was.
I know the name,
Mm.
but I don't really know much about who he is.
Well, he's a stand-up comedian predominantly, but he's also a television host in the UK, and his performance here as the painter is not a character. It's literally just his act. That's him. He just does like an hour and a half show that's just that particular thing of him maybe doing cartwheels and showing off different like weird props. It's kind of like Carrot Head, but not Carrot Head, Carrot Top with more one-liners. It's very strange. He had his own film, and I do highly recommend, Jonathan, you check that one out because it's a kids' film called the Harry Hill Movie, and it's a very strange film about him taking his sick hamster to Blackpool as a kind of like Make a Wish type thing, and it's basically yeah, and and somewhere along the lines, there's an evil vet that wants to put him down prematurely. So he starts chasing Harry and the hamster across the UK. And Julie Walters, who is probably best known in Billy Elliot, I think, she plays Harry's mum, and she comes along for the trip. And they just get into all kinds of bizarre adventures. It's all very trippy, a bit like the Mighty Boosh in some ways. I have a real soft spot for it, but there's a lot of people who were very unkind about that film. But I really enjoyed it. I thought its heart was in the right place. But yeah, he's a character in this that isn't, I believe, in other adaptations of Dick Whittington. But I think they had him just because ITV at the time had a big license with Harry Hill. And they were like, "Well, hey, we've got him on loan. We can use him. Just stuff him into this pantomime for 5 minutes, and people up just to watch Harry Hill do 5 minutes of weird paintbrush jokes." Um, Which, yeah. And I think it was a similar sort of situation with Vanessa Feltz. At the time, I believe she was a host on an ITV women's show called Loose Women, which was basically just kind of a women-centric talk show, self-explanatory. And I think she also did some stuff on daytime TV, like morning television. And again, I think it was just a case of, well, she's on loan, let's give her a 5 minute cameo in this because people will tune in to kind of see her. That's one of the things I would say is prominent with this pantomime is it's basically half the cast is people who have been hired specifically to take part in this pantomime, but the other half is stars of the ITV TV channel at that point who were on license to them, which meant that they could kind of just drop them in wherever. So, for example, I believe Kevin Bishop, Lee Mack, Sanjeev Bhaskar, and Mark Williams were all kind of on loan at ITV at that time. They could kind of move from show to show, so they were just like, "Well, we've got them. We'll just put them in this pantomime because it's value for money. We can use them as we want." And I think it kind of works, but it also kind of doesn't. There's a lot of people who just kind of dip in for 2 minutes and then disappear with no reason, no sort of connection to the story at all.
Yeah, I
Um,
noticed that.
yeah.
I kind of wondered if that was something that they did to round out the cast, because like the original, at least the ones that I've seen, or the stories that I've read, because like there's not really too many actual adaptations of this, but like the few retellings that I've watched people do online, it's a very small cast. There's so many more people in this than there are in any of the other very short fables that I have heard of this story.
Mm.
Because normally you have Dick and his cat, Fitzwarren, his daughter, and his cook, and then at some point, depending on the version, usually an unseen king of a faraway land who needs help with the rats. And that's basically it. So they have really filled out the cast.
Absolutely, absolutely. And again, that's kind of really the nature of panto, especially when they've got so many people involved in it. I think they essentially thought, well, we've got to make it an hour and 15 minutes long, so we'll just get as many sort of random gags in as possible. What was quite interesting with this one as well was that they seemed to bring back a lot of people who we've already talked about. So, for example, Julian Clary's back in. He was previously in our last pantomime discussion,
Hmm.
playing the cat. I think he's very good in it, although I think he's a little bit more tamer than the previous one we covered.
Yeah,
He seems a little bit less likely to take risky jokes. We had Paul Merton back. He was in the what was it? It was the '80s pantomime we watched alongside Ronnie Corbett.
it was a version of Cinderella. I'm trying to remember who
Yes.
he played because there was several people that I vaguely recognized, and I'm pretty sure they were in one of the other ones that we've talked about.
Yeah. He was one of the ugly sisters in
Oh,
Cinderella.
okay. That's why he wasn't
Yes.
instantly recognizable because he had a lot less makeup.
Absolutely, absolutely. But he's still kind of doing that same shtick. Like again, Paul Merton's comedy routine is very much how he plays the captain in this. Kind of almost like a kind of gullible character, but who gets kind of witty one-liners thrown out occasionally.
Mm,
Um, but there's also a lot of people here who are very much in their early sort of days of being famous. So Kevin Bishop, who plays Dick in this, he would go on to have a bit of a stint on Channel 4 doing comedy sketch shows. Probably his most famous one was a show called The Kevin Bishop Show, where he did a lot
oh,
of work with Karen
interesting.
Gillan.
That
Um,
I should look up some of this because to me, I was shocked to see him because the only thing I know him as is Jim Hawkins in Muppet Treasure Island,
yes.
which he's much younger in that. Like, I
Oh,
guess not
yeah.
much younger because it was maybe like half a decade before, but still, he was a lot younger than here. And I don't think I've seen him in anything else other than Muppet Treasure Island. So nice to see him again because Muppet Treasure Island is one of my favorite Muppet movies. So
Oh, I
it
love it
was
too.
great to see him again.
Absolutely, absolutely. And this is the thing. He kind of had his peak popularity, at least in the UK, I would say around the mid to late 2000s. And then he kind of went more into sort of serious acting, and I believe he's starred in a number of UK dramas, TV shows, and films since then. But it was also interesting to see people like Lee Mack turn up. He played the idle shopkeeper assistant when
Yes.
Dick goes into the shop.
When he first
He,
turned up, I thought he was going to be, because when we talked about Cinderella, there was a character called Buttons that was not in Cinderella, but he was in the pantomime versions. And I thought, it's like, is this, are they putting a Buttons character in this? But then he turned out to be evil, so I guess it wasn't.
basically, and that was an interesting twist because I'm not sure if that character is in the original story or
No,
not. I
he's
don't think
not.
he is. But it does create a little bit of extra padding for the story to kind of get it up to time. But again,
Hmm.
he's a very famous comedian over here, and this was a quite early appearance for him. He didn't really properly take off, I would say, until maybe the early 2010s, late 2000s. So it was interesting to see him sort of turn up in a quite early role. Probably my favorite performance in this entire thing is Mark Williams as the Rat King. It,
He was great. He was one of the few people who, to me, even though he was covered in makeup, he was instantly recognizable, and only because he was Rory's dad in like two episodes of Doctor Who.
yeah, absolutely,
I don't think I know
absolutely.
him from anything else. I guess he was in Harry Potter, which I have seen, but only once, and it was so long ago I don't really remember other than the main three kids. I don't
Oh,
remember
yeah.
much of the movies, so I did not remember that he was in Harry Potter. I know him as Rory's dad from Doctor Who.
That's probably the one I would most quickly go to, but I know him from a few other places as well pretty well. He was a player in a show called The Fast Show over here, which was like a comedy sketch show, very very popular in the 90s, and he had a lot of roles in there. One of his most famous characters was he played like a farmer type character who lived in a shed. And the sketch was really short. All he'd do is he'd slide open the barn doors, just like dressed in like rags, basically, stand out, and then he would say, "This week I have been mostly wearing yogurt," and then he'd step back and shut the door again. That was just his character. That was what he did. Um, but he's really good in this. I really loved his character. I thought he was very well rounded in terms of giving exactly what you want out of sort of a comedy character like that. I think my favorite moment of all of it was where he was telling his sort of tragic backstory. Um, and again, if you're not in the UK, this that was actually his backstory bit was a reference to something that was actually happening in the UK at the time. There was a radio program called Our Tune that would play like some really schmaltzy music in the background. And a DJ would read, and this is Sunday morning, so like your alarm goes off at like, I don't know, 8 a.m. And you're greeted by a DJ who, and they did this for like an hour slot, who would just sit and read letters sent in by listeners. And it was either bittersweet kind of lost love stories or like tragic stories, whilst this sort of sad music is wafting in the background. And they use the same music for the Rat King doing his story. So it's kind of like he's doing that bit.
I thought you were going to say there was something about his backstory that was a reference to something, and I was like, his backstory was that he was in love with a cat who ate his parents. How is that kind of reference?
In all fairness, some of the stories on our tune were very similar. Just yeah, I think he did a really great job in this, and I enjoyed the sort of tone he approached it with. It's interesting to see him play a villain character. He doesn't get to do that very often, but I think he really kind of nailed it.
Yeah, he was fine. Like I said, I know him as Rory's dad, who is like really sweet. And like I'm trying to remember his character in Harry Potter, and he was the dad of
Oh, of
Ron.
Ron Weasley. Yeah,
Yeah, so
yeah.
he was a nice guy there too. So it is seemingly out of character, but he did a really good job as this weird rat king.
who doesn't really do a lot. He just kind of
No, I was expecting him to do more.
menaces.
Like, even though the Rat King is not a character in the original tale, they introduced him at the beginning, and I was like, okay, this kind of makes sense, because, like, the rats don't really come into it until the end, like, when he has to save this faraway kingdom from rats. So it's like, it's nice that they're introducing this early to have it build up to that. But then he just kind of popped in and out once in a while, and then he was completely unrelated to the other rats.
Yeah.
I was like, okay.
Yeah, yeah, just wild. And again, I kind of enjoyed that aspect to it. And I think these pantomimes that were done for ITV from 1999 through to around 2004, 2005, I think that was kind of a solid era for them. I think it helped that they had the same writers, the same stage directors back year on year to do these adaptations.
Hmm.
But I really think they kind of nailed the formula. It's not perfect, hearsay turn up. That's less than
I don't
fantastic,
even
but
know who that is. Like, they came out of the audience, and the audience acted like they were somebody that we were supposed to know, and I'm like, who is this? I have no idea.
right. So this is pop culture ephemera at its finest. So
I kind of figured.
basically, oh, let me just figure out what the name of the show was. One second. There was a show they were on. Before America's Got Talent, before Pop Idol or anything like that, there was a show on ITV, funnily enough, called Pop Stars, which was effectively Pop Idol before Pop Idol was Pop Idol. I said Pop Idol a lot then. Um, and the idea was that they were going to try and form a perfect band. And Hearsay was the winner of Pop Idol, Pop Stars in February 2001. So a year after they were formed, very, very popular because back then, if you won like Pop Idol or America's Got Talent, it actually kind of meant something. They had a couple of hits. Their main hit was called Pure and Simple. And things went a bit nuts in the UK for about a year with them. They sort of turned up everywhere and were performing all the time and doing all that sort of thing. I'm guessing that there was an extra member in that band who, for whatever contractual reason, didn't turn up, so was represented by a doll. Either that or Hearsay had entered a fugue state on entering the pantomime and had created an extra band member. Um, but yeah, they just kind of turn up because they were probably tied to ITV for a certain number of appearances on the channel for that year. And they don't even play their hit song. They don't even play the thing that people remember them for over here, if they remember them for anything.
The songs they did, I just assumed it must have been some famous song that I was not aware of because I wasn't aware of them.
No, it's as far as I'm aware, it's a bit of a deep cut. Not the songs that have carried, put it that way. I think they lasted in total 2 or 3 years, and then they split up. And I don't think they've got back together since. But yeah, they were kind of the first wave of like reality show pop stars to be generated over here. So that's why they're in this, is because ITV were like, well, we've got a band, just stick them on. Just, I don't know, have them sing folk songs or something. I don't know what they're singing. Just we'll give them a song. We'll write them a song. We'll get the Rat King to sing a song. That'll work.
I mean, that's basically what I figured. I had just never heard of these people.
Yeah, in fairness, not a lot of people now would really remember them. It was very much one of those you had to be there kind of things to
Uh-huh.
to
I'm
kind
kind
of
of getting the sense that that is the same with a bunch of the people. Like, for all of the pantomimes we've talked about, there's always people who they were very famous for a short window of time doing something very specific that did not get over to the US.
Yeah, basically, I mean, running through the cast list on this, the vast majority of the performers here are either drama actors who have kind of always just been sort of bit part drama actors, or they were light entertainment comedians and TV hosts who had a very specific peak of fame sometime between the mid 90s and the mid 2000s, and then just
Hmm.
sort of very sharply dropped off. I mean, an example, probably one of the examples of one of the better ones, is Jessica Stevenson, who's now known as Jessica Hines, who plays the Good Fairy.
She looked vaguely familiar, but I don't think I saw anything on her page that jumped out at me.
So there's two things that she's really well known for. One is that she plays a main character in a Channel 4 sitcom called Spaced, which is a big kind of pop culture touchstone for a certain generation of nerds.
I've heard
It
of
was
it, but I've
basically
never seen it.
yeah, it's one of Edgar Wright's first works. He got commissioned to do it for Channel 4, and it's basically about two slightly nerdy, slightly unpopular people who end up faking a relationship so they can share a flat in a terrace in London, and the turns out that everybody else who's sharing that house is also a bit weird, and they just go on sort of strange pop culture adventures. Like they'll have references to Jurassic Park and Back to the Future and Resident Evil, and it's very, very early 2000s in style. I think at this point, if you hadn't grown up with it, you would probably have a bit of a Marmite response. You'd either love it or hate it. But the other thing that you'll probably recognize her from is that she played the 10th Doctor's wife in the Family of Blood two-parter.
Oh, I maybe I didn't scroll down far enough, but yes, that's why I recognized her because I could have sworn I
Mm.
recognized her face from something.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay, yes, I know exactly who this is.
Absolutely. She dips in and out of dramas and TV series regularly. She still does a bit of comedy, but they would be the two things I think most people would recognize her from. And again, it's one of those where like you said, the cast list to this reads basically as people who had a very narrow window where they were doing really, really well, and now they're either doing all right or nobody knows who they are, and there's no middle ground.
Yeah, basically, because even the people that I recognize, I really only recognize them from one thing, even though it's something I really like Kevin Bishop as Jim Hawkins. Like the only thing I knew him from was Muppet Treasure Island. That was a favorite movie as a kid.
Searching for adventure on the big blue wet thing.
Also, James Fleet, he was Hugo in The Vicar of Dibley.
Yes.
He
Yes.
almost was the same character in this. It's
It
just
was
Hugo again.
basically. He plays what he plays well.
He does. Oh, and then
Uh,
what I don't think I would have recognized the person because of all the makeup, but the cook was played by Richard Wilson, who I knew as the doctor from the Empty Child two-parter on Doctor Who. The
yes,
guy who worked at the
absolutely.
hospital, not the doctor, but like an actual doctor.
Yeah, yeah. Over here as well, he's very well known for playing a character called Victor Meldrew, who is an irate pensioner. He was in a series called One Foot in the Grave. And it's basically a gentle sitcom
Oh, I think I've
following a
seen
pensioner going
that.
through life. Yeah, yeah. It's good.
Because I think there was a window of like maybe a year or two where that replaced one of the staples on PBS, one of the other Britcoms. Like it wasn't on for very long, so it wasn't like one that we grew up with. It was just there for
Mm.
like a year or two. And it wasn't a favorite, so we didn't watch that one all the time. It just when we didn't have anything else to do. It's like, oh, they've got this one on again. Okay, we'll watch it, I guess.
It's the same reaction that we had over here when it went out. 10 seasons and two films.
I don't remember much
Some
about the show. I just remember it wasn't a favorite.
literally I can the entire plot of one foot in the grave. I think I said one flew over the cuckoo's nest. One foot in the grave. The entire plot of it is just Victor Meldrew is an elderly, grumpy pensioner, and every episode is him dealing with something that would make a grumpy pensioner grumpy, and that's it. That's the entire show. Like I'm not joking. 7 seasons and two films. Just ran for years.
I might like it better now than I did when I was a kid.
Probably. Probably. It's kind of like the inverse of Keeping Up Appearances, whereas Keeping Up Appearances is like a slightly older lady trying to look above her station. Victor Meldrew is just, he looks like a curmudgeonly elderly pensioner who just does not care about anyone and doesn't want to keep up appearances. If anything, he wants to go away.
I probably would like this better now. I should look it up.
Well, his catchphrase in that show was "I don't believe it," and in the pantomime, one of his lines that he shouts out towards the end is, all of this stuff that's gone on, I don't believe it." And everywhere he said the thing, he said the thing, he did the line, he said the thing. Um, But yeah, it's good. It was a very nostalgic watch for me in the same way that our Cinderella doubleheader was, because there were so many people who turned up who I hadn't thought about probably in like 20 years. And it was nice to be able to go, oh, them, yeah. Oh, all right. Well, I remember them now. Whatever benefit that'll give me. Uh, I could imagine this would be a really nice thing because, again, when I mentioned these televised pantomimes, there was really only two purposes for them. One was for parents to show their kids if they couldn't get to an actual pantomime, and the other one was as a bit of a babysitter. The idea was you could put this on. They'd usually play these on like Christmas Day or Boxing Day.
Hmm.
So the kids could sit and watch them whilst mum and dad go and make the Christmas dinner or do some other sort of setting up for maybe a Boxing Day party or whatever. And I think that growing up with those as kids, I imagine there must be a certain level of nostalgia for those. I don't think they do these kind of things anymore. I think the last time they had a try at it was a couple of years ago. They did a TV adaptation of the play that always goes wrong, but it was like a Christmas version. And the idea was that again, it's like a TV broadcast where everything goes wrong, but it's framed as a pantomime. So like people will go to open doors and they won't open, so they'll have to deliver their lines through the door because they can't get the door open. Or like there'll be an angel on a wire, but the wire will drop them straight to the floor, or then swing them out over the audience rather than.
I need
But
to. I don't remember if I've said this before. I know I told somebody, I don't remember if it was you, but I watched The Play That Goes Wrong, the Christmas Carol version, I think back during the first or second year of my YouTube channel, and I did not like it. And that review that I did has racked up the most dislikes, negative comments, furious people, so incensed that I did not like this special. And I think, not that I'm doing this for them, but I think I would like it better now. I don't think I
mm,
got the joke.
yeah,
I think I
yeah,
went into it thinking it was more supposed to be like a spoof of the story. Instead, I think it's more like a spoof of pantomime in general from the way you're describing it.
Yeah, basically that's kind of the vibe with it is it's taking on panto tropes and subverting them. I don't know, I have a love-hate relationship with people intentionally trying to do things badly. Like I think if it's done really well, I really like it, but sometimes I feel like when people try to do things bad on purpose, sometimes it can come across as they just couldn't do it good, so they're trying to pass off bad as good, if you know what I mean.
I think that's the feel that I got from The Play That Goes Wrong. It just felt like it was trying too hard and it wasn't funny.
Mm, absolutely, absolutely. I find that the best times where bad how do I phrase this? I find the best times where bad stuff is made on purpose are the ones where the people who make it are so invested in knowing how to do things wrong. They have to be so good at doing things right that doing things wrong is almost second nature to them because they know how both sides of it work.
Hmm.
I don't think that you can just do a thing but badly and it be funny necessarily.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's like back to Keeping Up Appearances, her acting. Like at, anytime she would try to sing, like she's an extremely good actor, but like trying to be this horrible person.
Yeah, absolutely. That Patricia Rutledge had that real quality, R.I.P. by the way.
Yeah.
But she had a real knack of picking up on just the right level of tone for a line delivery where you could tell that she didn't really mean what she was saying, even though she was trying to be sincere. There was
Uh-huh.
just the slight sting in that delivery that just makes you go, she's just saying that to keep up appearances. She's not saying that because she actually believes anything to do with what she's actually saying. And I think she was very, very good at that. But
Yeah.
yeah. Whereas with this, I honestly, I kind of it felt quite rightly, as you said, like maybe about 20 minutes of actual plot padded by about an hour of just random tangents that kind of
It
vaguely tied
did.
into the main story.
Yes, which I kind of was expecting because the few, like, I haven't done a ton of research into Dick Whittington, but I watched like people reading a children's book retelling the story and someone talking about the fable. So both the videos that I'm thinking of right off the top of my head that I watched were like 7 minutes long. Like, it is
Mm.
not a long story. It is very short. Dick Whittington goes to London, finds a cat, gets employed by Fitzwarren. There's a cook that's mean to him, which the cook in this was so much nicer than I was expecting because the cook is awful in the ones that I've seen. I thought she was going to be, because again, she was the panto dame. So I was
Mm.
like, okay, so this is going to be an awful character. She's going to be horribly mean to him. And then she was kind of nice. So I was like,
Yeah.
okay, I was not expecting that because in the fable, she's awful. But
Mm.
then at some
Oh yeah.
point, he needs money and Fitzwarren's like going on a journey. So he sends the cat with him. And then depending on the story, sometimes he wants to send the cat, sometimes he feels like he has no choice. And then he's not on the journey. Dick does not go on the ship.
Mm.
At some point, the cat takes care of a rat problem, and there's a king who is so happy that he pays tons of money to buy the cat, and then the money is brought back to Dick, and then he lives happily ever after. He marries Fitzwarren's daughter. Like, it's a very short, very simple story.
Yeah. But it feels like here they kind of went, well, we can't. That would be too. There'd basically be a lot of dead air whilst this cat's out to sea. So we've got to bring Dick
Yes.
along for the ride, and then obviously they've got the whole sort of different land and all that sort of business going on. It's yeah, it feels like they took a little bit more of a creative liberty with this than they did
Uh-huh.
with the other pantomimes they worked with. Um,
Yeah. Not all of
I
it
don't
made
necessarily.
perfect sense. Because, like I said, the
Mm,
rat coming in, like, I liked the character, but he didn't really need to be there. Because, like, you
mm,
have Idle Jack, who betrays Dick, frames him for stealing a necklace, but he was put up to it by the rat. You could have condensed that down.
yeah.
I don't know that you even need the whole framing situation, but I think that they part of it was they wanted to do an audience interaction thing with like the back and forth between Idlejack, the rat, and the audience. Because
Yeah.
that made that thing funny for me, just the rat screaming at the audience.
Yeah. This is the thing, and that was one thing I did pick up with this one over the Cinderella adaptation we covered, which is I think that this one gave a better example of the audience participation
Oh,
side of
definitely.
pantomime,
Even with the
particularly with
panto dame, the cook, the way she's like
yeah.
tossing candy in the audience and also fried eggs and sausages.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Like it's still kind of tame. I mean, I've seen pantomimes before now. I've been in the audience in pantomimes before now, where like full-blown water fights have broke out with like water balloons and water pistols and all sorts. But that's a good example of how it works. They'll do things like throw sweets to the audience or bring people up to sort of talk through bits and pieces. I mean, one of my favorite bits is where was his name Fitzgerald.
Fitzwarren,
Fitzwarren, that's the one, where he
Hugo.
says, "Oh, my shop sells everything. You can name something, and I'll definitely have it. You tell me what." And he gets the audience to start shouting things out as if he's going to produce them, and he just goes, "Yep, I've got that.
I
Yep,
thought there
got
was
that."
going to be something more to that. It was just the audience is all yelling incomprehensibly. I have no idea what any of them were saying, and he's acting like he's
Yeah.
understanding everything.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, it's great stuff in that regard. It really kind of nails it in sort of bringing the audience in a bit more. But yeah, I think that it's a solid example of a bog standard panto. I think that would probably be my kind of caption for this one. I think it's not the best I've ever seen, but I think that if you went to a pantomime and saw that, you'd come out going, "Yep, that was a show. That was a pantomime. That's that's what I care. That's what I was craving in terms of an hour and 15 minutes worth of song, dancing, and double innuendos."
I will say, I think I liked this better than any of the other ones we've talked about so far.
Really?
I think this was my favorite. I don't know what it was about it. Maybe it was because I had no real preconceived expectations as to what the story was supposed to be. Just like with the Sleeping Beauty one, it was like almost barely the Sleeping Beauty story. It just had little
Mm.
bits of the Sleeping Beauty story kind of sprinkled here and there. The Cinderella one, well, both of them, like it was Cinderella, but it was all this other stuff. Like with this one, there's so many little bits and skits and stuff that they crammed into it that it didn't feel like the Cinderella story. But with Dick Whittington, I don't know much about Dick Whittington, so it didn't seem as weird to me that they kept stopping the story to go off and do some weird little skit. Although the paint thing was the only thing where I was like, what is happening? But then there was also a paint thing in one of the Cinderella versions where there was like a paint fight. I was like, is
Yeah.
this a panto thing? Just stopping the
Yeah,
show for a paint fight?
yeah, it kind of is. Um, like there's always a bit of a messy, mucky bit to Panto because writers know that kids love seeing grown-ups in funny costumes, getting covered in anything from mushy peas to gravy to paint to whatever, because it's basically it falls into the same principle as man fall down, go boom. It's something kids don't expect because grown-ups are very serious. So when they see that thing, it makes them laugh. So yeah, they do have occasional moments where they'll like do like a weird sort of just randomly shoved in, like the panto dame gets a bucket of paint tipped over their head, or the villain gets covered in, I don't know, cereal for some reason, and it just makes the kids laugh. So I assume they just do it because of that, really.
It makes sense. I can't think of any examples off the top of my head, but I know that was a trope in kids' media when I was a kid. Like food
Mm.
fights and kids or adults getting something gross thrown on them. This seems so oddly specific though with a paint fight that it was like this is two pantomimes in a row now that we've had a paint fight. I didn't know if that was now a standard thing that I just hadn't picked up on or but no, that makes
Yeah,
sense. I think we talked about the paint fight in the context of it being something that kids like messes the last time. So it makes
yeah,
sense that they would do it again. I wonder if the other
absolutely.
ITV pantos have a paint fight or if they opt for a different kind of mess.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it could be. Well, we'll have to see what the future holds. I know they did Aladdin. That one was 1999,
I
and I
saw
know that
Aladdin
they.
and Jack and the Beanstalk when I was looking up different things, so there's at least two more.
Hey, well, I'm more than more than happy to talk Jack and Aladdin at some point if you're around. I know they have done one-off pantos in the 2010s because I can remember some being on television. I can remember watching some of them when I was sort of on my downtime through Christmas. So there is way more out there. I don't know if it's an annual thing nowadays or whether they just do one every couple of years so that they've got enough in the back catalogue to be able to do reruns. But yeah, it's a bit of a tradition over here. I mean, I suppose actually thinking about it, that's a question for yourself, Jonathan. Having now seen a few pantomimes, do you think that the pantomime structure, the pantomime sort of thing, would work with American audiences? Do you think that it could be something that's transferred over?
I think it could work as long as they knew what they were getting into. I think a lot of people
Hmm.
might be confused at first because at least, not that I go to the theater. This is not how plays work around over here. There's not a lot of audience interaction.
I was going to say I could imagine, a panto dame coming out and, and asking everybody if they want sweets and then throwing sweets into the audience. Might be a bridge too far for the people of Wisconsin, but
It probably depends on the audience. I'm sure there's an audience for this. I don't know that it would be a general audience, but I could see it working in the right context as long as people know what they're getting into.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, maybe they could put some kind of like warning up front. Maybe have somebody come out and say, "Now this is what pantomime is. It's a British tradition," and maybe sort of angle it as it's a cultural thing. These pouring paint on people is a cultural thing in England. Everybody does it.
It's like that Spanish tomato fest where they all throw tomatoes at each other, except in this case, it's paint, and at least one of them is a man in a dress.
You have to remember that these are foreigners with ways different than our own. But don't worry, we're all in this together, and 2 hours from now the doors will unlock and you can all go home. It was fun. It was a good pantomime. I wouldn't say it was the best one I've ever seen, both on telly or in person, but it had a lot going for it. It was something I kind of enjoyed.
Yeah. Like, I've only seen a handful. I think it's my favorite of the ones that we've talked about. I'm sure there are
Mm,
better examples. I think part of it was just because I recognized more people, and I'm kind of getting the hang as to what pantomime is supposed to be the more I
mm.
watch. And it was nice to see some returning faces because there were a few people I recognized, like Julian Clary now, even though I didn't know who he was before. Now he's kind of going to be synonymous with pantomime for me.
In fairness, he is for a lot of people. He started off in stand-up, but he did go into the panto. I mean, I think he's in a pantomime this year, funnily enough. He's usually in panto somewhere because, he's a very campy kind of, not necessarily over the top character, but his humor is the fact that he's a very subtle but campy character.
Yes,
Um,
that's why I liked him, especially in this one. Like when the cat first came out, I was like, why is the cat like so much? He's a giant compared to Dick Whittington. But then when he started talking, I was like, okay, Julian Clary is perfect as this cat. Like the cat,
yeah.
this is a cat. This is the attitude of a cat.
That was one of my favorite bits actually, where Dick's girlfriend goes up to him and is
Yes.
like, "Oh, can I give you a scratch? I'll scratch you to death."
It's basically don't touch me to anyone, and that's like yeah that's not every cat, but I know so many cats that are like that. Like if they don't
Oh
give you
yeah,
permission, they do not want to be touched.
no. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. You know what? I'm gonna have a quick look and just see where he is this year because he will be in Panto somewhere. He always is. Julian Clary pantomime 2025. I should have probably looked this up a little bit sooner, but he is in Sleeping Beauty at the Palladium this year in 2025, and he is playing. Who is he playing? Oh, he's in the same pantomime with Catherine Tate for this one.
Oh man, now I wish I
Hmm.
could go over there.
Uh, well, the cast in this. Who's playing? Here we go. Cast is Catherine Tate is playing in Sleeping Beauty a character called Carabosse or Carabose, Carabosse, and Julian Clare is playing the king.
Oh, okay. For some reason,
Hmm.
I was expecting him to be playing the Maleficent character.
You, oh, I think that's what that. Hmm. That might be what Catherine Tate's character is playing. The
That would make
costume looks,
sense. She
yeah.
would also be a good evil fairy.
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. There's another character, the joy of pantomime. There's a character in Sleeping Beauty now called the Great Zadini.
Okay.
All right, sure, why
It
not?
makes as much sense as a lot of the additions that they've done to the different ones we've seen. Sure,
Oh yeah,
why not? There's
yeah.
a little I don't remember his name, a fox puppet from a kids
Oh,
show that
Basil
showed up
Brush.
in yes. Since that if that can happen, then why not the Great Zadini or whatever?
I think he might be a ventriloquist because he's got a puppet with him. So you're in for a good evening. Get your tickets to Sleeping Beauty at the London Palladium
You're making it
with the
sound
great.
better and better. I love a good puppet.
Oh yeah. There's and famous actor Nigel Havers. He's in it as well, and he's playing a character called Keeper of the Privy.
So it's supposed to be like a medieval version of like those bathroom attendants who just stand inside the bathroom door with a pile of towels.
Basically. uh, joy of Panto. I love Panto. I haven't been to Panto in years. Jonathan, if you ever come to the UK, I'm taking you to a pantomime. I won't put you on the
Yes.
front row, that would be mean, but I'll take you to a panto. We can sit in the back and just kind of
Just hope that the
knowingly
Panto
laugh.
Dame doesn't spot us.
Oh, yeah. It depends. It's right. It depends on how energetic you find your panto dame. Honestly, I've had panto dames before. Now we've gone to like theaters that have had 3 tiers of seating, like going up, and they've run out into the foyer and up the stairs and started going onto the balconies and pulling people down. They're a formidable person, the panto dame. You take your life in your hands when you're dealing with a panto dame.
I can't. I can't decide if this sounds terrifying or hilarious. Maybe it's
It's
both.
usually both. My uncle did a pantomime once where I think he was on the second or third row back, and he was in his 30s at the time, and the panto dame spotted him and basically sort of went, "Oh, hello, who are you?" And he told him his name, and he was like, "Oh, I like you. Stand up. Let's get a look at you." He made him stand up, and they put the spotlight on him. And they sort of checked him out. Oh, yes, he's lovely, isn't he, boys and girls? And everybody was laughing at him. My uncle, tragically shy, was basically crawling through the back seats. And he was about to sit back down, and she went, "Oh, no, 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 stay there. You stay there. Stay standing." And then the spotlight went off, and the play carried on. And he just had to stand there. And every time he went to sit down, he'd clock him and go, "No, you." And he'd stand up. I mean, eventually, I think that when she left the stage, he was able to finally sit down. But it was a good 5 or 10 minutes where that panto dame was like a hawk, just watching him constantly.
This is what I would want to avoid.
Yeah. Like I say, we'll get you on the balconies. We'll get a box or something. Oh, actually, we won't get you a box because that's right next to the stage. They usually pick on the box because they call them posh people. Couldn't afford to be in the pit, eh? Had to buy a box. Oh, luxury. So yeah, if you like being embarrassed very heavily and dragged on stage and made to hold buckets of paint for the panto dames whilst they drown each other live on stage, go and see your local pantomime this year. It's a thrilling and invigorating experience. Everyone should go to at least one, whether they like it or not.
I guess I'm convinced. I do think it would be fun. I would just be,
Oh yeah.
I would be looking out of the corner of my eye, just waiting to be set upon by a giant panto dame.
In many ways, you'd be living many men's fantasies.
Well, on that note, I suppose that's about all we have to say about Dick Whittington. We will probably be back for more pantomime stuff in the future. But until then, would you like to let people know where they can find you online?
Well, Jonathan, thank you again. As always, a pleasure and a privilege to chat all things sparkly, frocky, and painty. You can find me over on YouTube under TYTD Reviews. I'm also on Letterboxd TYTD Reviews and Blue Sky TYTD Reviews. I cover cult classic cinema, forgotten films, and all the weirdness in between. I don't know when this will go out, so I don't know what video will be up at the time that this goes live, but it'll probably be something fairly festive. And thank you again for having me on.
Thank you for joining me. We will see you again for something else pantomime in the future.
Lovely stuff.
Thanks for listening to this podcast on the John Cast Network. We'll be back soon with another episode, but in the meantime, make sure you follow my co-hosts. I'll have their links in the description, along with links to all our latest episodes, all my socials, and my Patreon, where you can find bonus and extended episodes, and get early access to most episodes, sometimes up to a week in advance. Make sure to subscribe to this show on whichever podcast platform you prefer, and follow the John Cast Network on YouTube for more podcasts covering all kinds of things beyond just what you'll find here. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you again soon.